Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap-up presented by the Goxstein News Network. I am your host, Landy, and today is October 3rd, 2025, and Bitcoin has fulfilled some of the criteria that we talked about in the past, couple of weeks actually, since Bitcoin broke down from the primary area of that kind of 116 to 118, or rather rejected in this case, after testing the weekly at 112. Getting that high at 124.5 and then plumbing down into the weekly and even hitting the daily here prior to the move up to new highs out of the prior range. That being this consolidation here on the daily. After testing that, nice little uptrend, got the trend break to the downside, retested the weekly at 109, which isn't marked right now, but I will show the actual areas of interest chart here in just a moment, or my drawings for it. And now, we got to break right back to the upside and a test of the all-time high zone. And we have now, of course, seen a close above the the 118, and then subsequently we saw, like I was saying, above 121, or specifically that zone of interest, the tighter zone of interest around this consolidation between 120 and 121, that above 121 on closes, especially dailies, the shorts would be forced to reposition. And we did see that. That allowed price to run our 123 to 125 zone up here. And, it's a good day for the bulls. It's been a good week. And in fact, we're on about, so we've got the 28th it's been a full week. So it's been a good 7 days or so for price action, and off the lows, at least after setting the low. It's been, a little bit of a back test, and then 7 days of up, or 6 days of up with one little break in between. Looks good. And quite honestly, as long as the bulls, I'm going to kind of cut right to the chase here. As long as the bulls are closing above that 116 to 118, here on spot it's specifically 115.7 for me to 117.8. But you can call it 116 to 118. As long as they're trading above there, they're going to have more and more opportunity to continue to run the all-time high area and higher. On lower term time frame pullbacks, around that 120 to 121 is what the bulls want to see hold up for continuation. But again, this is coming into a weekend, and when we see price pump into a weekend, and especially over a weekend, be prepared for a test back for liquidity to the downside. Now, no matter what happens, this is trendless, right? Because we had a trend break to the downside and then a trend break right back to the upside. So wherever this puts in its daily high, we are more statistically likely going to see a higher low or equal low structure as it relates to this last lower low. So we have lower low, higher high. The more statistically likely outcome is we get a correction on the daily, wherever that comes from, and we look for higher low or equal low structure on a swing, and then especially a close. And that would be the trend reversal setup. And I'll go ahead and give a little room here and just give an example. This is just an example, and it would look something like this. Let's say this was the high, it comes down, let's say it tags, in between 116, 118, and then puts in a trend reversal setup. Now, that would be the setup. So once it actually locks in a low, wherever that comes from, this of course is just an example, but once it locks in a low, that would be the trend reversal setup. Equal lows also apply. So equal lows down here would also be valid. That would be a trend reversal setup. I would tell you right now that would more than likely result in lower highs, but it is something to be aware of. Now, once we do get something like a trend reversal setup, how is that confirmed? Well, you typically want to see strength on closes that create a low, in this case a higher low, and then the confirmation would be trading back above the higher high. We also have another thing going on here, and that is we're starting to get expansion again, in this case to the upside, with two closes above the upper second standard deviation, kicking off expansion to the highs. And for continuation, we need to see, and confirmation of breakout expansion, we need to see closes above the 124,533 all-time high for Bitcoin. So running the all-time high zone, shorts piling in, profit taking happening from the bulls. In order to get that next leg and really confirm expansion to the upside, we need to see a close above the all-time high and then continuation on to our next targets, that being like 128 to 130, mid 130s, I would say, for the daily, and then 138 to 140 is the next big area. And those are rough areas based on fibs, but the 128 to 130 is something we're going to talk about to the upside here in just a moment, a little bit more. We still have a little bit of juice left to squeeze, but we need to see continuation to the highs and higher over the weekend. I'm not totally confident in that before seeing a correction. But we'll see how the weekend goes. We still have some juice to squeeze on momentum. There is, of course, the opportunity for some hidden bear divs to populate, but there's no in-trend bearish divergence, as this is a break, and this is coming off of a drive of hidden bullish divergence, which essentially was sending it back to those checkpoints areas that we talked about, 116 to 118, 120 to 121, and then above there, the all-time high zone, 123 to 125. So we've now met all of that criteria for this move based off of all of these other factors, but we also need to pay a little bit of attention to the 2-day, which still has some juice left to squeeze to the upside here and is going into possible expansion here. But again, we need to see closes for confirmation of that expansion and not a reversal off the bands here to the top side, but we need to see closes above 124,533. And this, of course, would not just be for the daily, but the 2-day. The daily would likely give us an indication, but then we move to something like the 3-day. It's still got room to the upside here, right? And this one is where, we are not at or above the upper second just yet, but we are seeing momentum in that zone. We did hit the edge of the bullish control zone up top, and we just need to see confirmation above the highs. And beware that bearish divergence might come from those highs at some point whenever the 3-day does put in a high, if it doesn't beat around the 70 RSI read. 4-day, same deal, coming off of the bearish control zone for momentum. There is the opportunity for bearish, even on some higher highs here, especially on this close, because this is a higher high close. There is the opportunity for bearish divergence. So what do we need to see next? We need to see closes above the upper second, of course, get above the all-time high and start running to some of those deeper targets. 5-day has now turned to the upside. This is something that we're going to look for follow through from the weekly. This is also a continuation of that trend break. So on the trend break that we got in the last 5-day candle, we've talked about this. This current 5-day candle is the continuation to go test the high side structure. Need to see closes above the upper second, which did move from 123 to 124, perfectly tagged up here by the upper second. Just need to see closes above there and the all-time high, $533 above there to get that expansion. And of course, this is a compression, so we would be looking for upside expansion to some deeper targets on longer term time frames. The weekly, same deal, closing anywhere above 118. Then we're looking at a trend reversal setup that failed, right? And the only way that it was going to confirm was on closes below that 107,250, and that would be your confirmation to the downside, right into expansion into support, kind of from volatility increasing into support, and then the trend reversal setup confirming as it tested down into support, and then possibly more from there. But again, really strong supports as has been shown on the weekly here locally. Now, this is something where we're going to see momentum possibly turn right outside of the bottom edge of the bullish control zone for momentum, and we would likely see another drive of hidden bullish divergence populate as well, which I would say that this has already played out the initial move, right? Even though it hasn't confirmed that hidden bull div, the initial move is right back to the highs, and I would say that that's already confirmed. And what we're looking for is for the next targets after that, which would be above the highs, going for expansion, and same deal as the 5-day. We need to see closes above the upper second. Of course, they can also close above the all-time high at $500 above, at 124.5 essentially. So that's where we can then start targeting, some of the longer term, setups to the upside that we've talked about. 128 to 130 being the confluent 1414 fib. And this, of course, I'm going to make a little bit of a mess here on the chart, so I do apologize. But again, this is a macro fib extension on log scale. The 1414 is coming in at 128 to 130. I do give it a little bit of room above there. And then on the daily, you can see like we start looking up to some substantially higher targets by the upper third when we're looking at like a monthly. Also want to note the upper second for the monthly is right there. We want to see closes by the end of October there to start targeting the upper third, which is going to be right around $148,000. Now I'm going to show you once I pull this prior higher high to higher low, the last higher high to higher low on the monthly time frame here. I just want to zoom in here. I know it's a bit of a mess, but bear with me for a moment. That upper second standard deviation is on a confluent 1414. So this is both the prior fib that I just pulled from the prior cycle high to bear market low in 22, so 69K to 15.5, and the prior monthly higher high to higher low. We have a confluent 1414 right at 128 to 130. So that is a big area of interest to the upside. And then above there, we can start targeting something like 138 to 140. I would say in the daily, 135 is a safe area to also target for the daily as a front run of this 1.618. And that is coming from this higher high to higher low. So the 109,360 to 74,420.69. And that would be 138 to 140. And then if you look, we have confluence by the upper third on the monthly at the 786, between the 786 and the 1888, which is essentially 78.6% above this high over here, 109,360, and 88.8% above there as well. But I'd call it about 148 to 150,000. That would be the next big area on longer term timeframes like the monthly, provided all of the criteria that I laid out just a moment ago was met for expansion to the upside through some of those very important levels. Specifically, closes above the 1414 are going to, especially if that follows through not just on a weekly but a monthly, that would start to look like, hey, we could potentially see those deeper targets, 148 to 150, and even more on top of that. We can always come up with new areas of interest to the upside. Let's go back to the daily here. Let's look at the support and resistance zones of interest, and just kind of walk through those real quick, and then we'll take a look at Ethereum, as I really just want to keep an eye on the two majors, right? We have Bitcoin dominance to pay attention to as well. We might see a pullback on the daily, but the macro looks like it actually wants to go up more in terms of like the weekly. But in this case, we got our close, right, over 118. Third time was the charm, right, after the big breakdown. So we broke down to the weekly, made a new higher high, and then the downtrend into the weekly, and then the daily where this move originated from before 123 and 124.5. So just kind of filling out the zone of liquidity between 112 and the initial move consolidation before moving to 112 and through it. And then we saw that even on this downtrend, bounce off that weekly again right by 112 into that 116, 118 level, and then heading down, coming back up and testing that level 116 to 118, high side 118, come back down to the weekly at 109. That was the close open on the weekly. Sit on the swing at 112, and then third time's the charm, get up through 118. And then, as I mentioned at the time, above 118, we're looking for 120 to 121. We got that in the Thursday candle. And then I said above there, shorts have to reposition, and we're likely looking at 123 to 125. So we have completed all of that now, and now it's just about continuation. Get in above 123, start pushing that 124.5 and going for expansion above there to the 1414 at $128,000 to $130,000. And then, of course, off of a move like this, there's a few different ways that we could take this. I like last moves. And look, I know the GAN guys and the Elliott Wave guys get really irritated by some of this, but I do what works. All right. We've got a 1.618 that is right here at the all-time high area. Above there, we've got that 125, almost 126. And then we've got 126 and the 2 spot up there at 128. Above there, we start getting up into the 130 to 131. And then we can start seeing that the 2618 would be the mid 130s. So there is daily targets and confluences in that area as well. And if you want to take this low for retraces, which you'll find interesting, is that right around 118 to the downside, right at that high, right at that support area, 116 to 118, we've got a 50% fib and a 618. Now, I don't usually like harp on fibs, but I've had a lot of questions about like, hey, you're really accurate with a lot of this stuff. How many other confluent things are you factoring that you're not showing us? Well, this is one of the major confluent things that I'm factoring, is that I do a lot of this behind the scenes to come up with just the more simplified or distilled version, while trying to give you the most information and best outlook on where price is likely going to head if conditions are met to the upside or downside. And in this case, on retraces, you can see that we have confluence at a 618 off of this move off the lows to the current high. This high is not set yet, though. So this is just something to pay attention to. And you'd probably be better off taking this fib for the range, and that would be the all-time high to that low at 107,250, and you're still going to end up with essentially the same areas, right? You end up with just under the 115.7 swing over here of the tighter range before the deviation of this tighter range to the downside at 114,750. But essentially you end up with the same areas, 115.5, 115.6 to 117.6, almost 118. They're going to be generally the same. This would probably be the more accurate one to take. You can see it close below the 888, which is where the upper second is, and you can derive some pretty confluent targets to the upside. Once we start getting towards the macro fibs, 128 to 130. I like to generalize in that if you want to get really, really micro and you're like sniping and scalping and stuff like that, that's when this kind of stuff gets more important. Maybe for positioning and trying to find optimal positioning on the short side or long side or whatever it might be. But it's not as important as some of what I just show you with the pure local support and resistance zones of interest. Trend is your friend until the end of the trend. When the trend's unclear, everyone's in fear. Right now, the trend is more likely going to be an uptrend from here with at least a higher low. An uptrend or a downtrend break or a deviation of trend to the downside would be this area, and then it'd be resumption of uptrend with some sort of a higher low coming back into this zone, unless it goes on a run above. And then the criteria for a pullback, would for more bullish pullbacks would be these zones instead, right? And even a more bullish pullback for continuation would be 120 to 121 right now. Anywhere below there, the 119 area by the upper first is fair game, but really it starts to dip below there. We're looking 118 to 116, and the basis is going to start rising up towards that in the next close, provided Bitcoin doesn't nuke through these levels over the weekend. So that's pretty much all I got for you on Bitcoin. Let's go take a look at Bitcoin dominance, and then we'll wrap up with Ethereum. Bitcoin dominance on the daily does look as though it's got a lower high in place. It might pull back or consolidate here. If it does drop the low, it'd have to drop the basis band at 58.5% and then drop around the 58.34 to really 58.25, right? Drops below there, then it could head down. But this is strong support for Bitcoin dominance down here, with Bitcoin kind of taking the lead now and Bitcoin dominance rising with it. It's just that, alts aren't catching up as much in their US dollar pairs, although they are going up. off of some key support levels. But just be aware that this could come back down, maybe give a little bump to alts as they play catch up. But, excuse me, let's look at the weekly. The weekly looks like it wants to set this low and go higher for like 60% and above. Between like 60 and I would even give it up to like almost 61% there by 60.85, or even head up to 61.5. I would say 61 is probably fair game though, as the basis band is going to tick down. I don't see Bitcoin dominance rocketing up that much over a weekend, but we'll see what happens. But it's coming off of some extremes on the weekly here. And I do think either way, if Bitcoin dumps out, I think Bitcoin dominance heads up. And if Bitcoin breaks out, I think Bitcoin dominance heads up on the longer term timeframes, especially if it goes on for some substantially higher price action and some further legs to the upside. You know, we're talking not just the 128 to 130, but starting to look towards that 138, 140, and then up towards that 148, 150 area. Of course, with daily levels along the way that we'll identify along the way. But that's where we can start to really say, like, okay, you know, Bitcoin, it's been a Bitcoin run, and it might continue to be that, especially with the look on momentum on the weekly. We have a moving average crossover for RSI. It's coming off of a key level. Oops. Yeah, I can't go across the screen there. Coming off of a key level for Bitcoin dominance here. And what the bears, Bitcoin dominance bears want to see, meaning that you're looking for an alt season, which I still think is not going to be a full-blown alt season. I think it's going to be a sector-by-sector rotational alt season still. And I think that might be the case for a long time. But what you really want to see is for this to lower high and then take out that low and start running towards 54.5%, 55% dominance. And really just living below this 60%. That's really what you want to see. If you're looking for a more concerted push from the altcoins versus their Bitcoin pairs. Let's go ahead and take a look at Ethereum. And yes, there we go. ETH at 4,500. So it's right at a key level on the daily. It did get above and close slightly above. And even run to 4,600. And give me a second here as I struggle through my own charting. But yeah, it's trying to sit on 4,500. It did run just under 4,600 for spot. Most derivatives and futures ran to 4,600 and even tagged the 4,630. But we need to see spot follow. We don't want derivatives leading. We want spot we want derivatives following spot like Bitcoin right now, because the spot side of the trade is what's driving Bitcoin higher. And of course, a lot of that's coming from ETF inflows, and we need to see about 4,600, 4,630 to then run and start to take out the last high. And this was a lower high at 4,650 or so, and then take out the high, which was also a lower high as it compared to this guy over here. But that was given away by some of the lower high, lower low structure, trend break, higher low, lower high, and then down. This was a consolidation, right? We did get a deviation to the downside and hit that 3,800, 3,825 down here, which deviated the weekly at 3,900. But essentially, the weekly closing above there is going to be fine, which it did. I think the weekly, if I remember correctly, closed substantially higher, 4,100 or so. This is where we wanted to see this consolidation. I mentioned this on the way up, and then get that kind of load up the next big leg for 46 to 4,850 up here, and then take that high just below 5K and then start to run. And you can see that the upper third on the dailies right there. If we do see this break up above 46, 4630 and break that 4650, that's where we can start to entertain a trip to the next high by the upper second standard deviation. Only on closes above there we would look to the prior all-time high, just below 4,900, and then starting to look up to just above there to 5K, the all-time high, and 5K and beyond. That's, then we can start looking 5,500 to 6K, and then up to the next major level, which is 16.8% above the prior cycle high, which is a 1.168. And that's at, 4600, or I'm sorry, 6600. Geez, 6600 area. And then there's more confluent areas to the upside. There's, then we're starting to push, into the 7K, almost 8K area up here by the 1272. Again, the big thing for Ethereum, what to watch for here is, we got a swing trend break, but it's really not a substantial one. In this case, we need to see higher low equal low structure or take out the last. I would prefer to see the bulls for Ethereum take out the last high here at 4650 or so, and then go for higher low equal low setup, right? And then try to take out this most recent high. On pullbacks, 4,400 down to 4,200, fair game. Even all the way down to 4,100. Anywhere below the 4,100 area, we start getting into these swing lows, and likely headed down to 4K, 3,900, and maybe even a test of those lows again. The more recent lows around 3,800. So just be aware that we're looking for Bitcoin to put in higher low equal low structure, but it's in a much stronger position than Ethereum right now until Ethereum breaks the last lower high on the daily at 4650. But either way, if Bitcoin puts in a higher low, I would look for Ethereum to try and follow with higher low equal low structure if Bitcoin does that as well. And that's going to lead me to the weekly here. And we did have a weekly lower high setup on Ethereum, but as I mentioned, this was coming off of a major expansion, so we're looking for consolidation, and we're looking for kind of a trendless structure, and that's exactly what we're getting. Basis band's going to be inside of those dailies pretty soon, 3,600 to 30, essentially 3,800 around these dailies, and then we just want to kind of see that area hold up at worst, and for immediate continuation back to the top side, sitting above 4,500 is going to look good. 4,400 is an okay area for it to sit as well. But for immediate, like over the weekend into next week, 44 to 4,500 is where you kind of want to see it. Otherwise, it's going to go for liquidity at 42, 41. Then we can start looking for possible, trend reversal setups in the daily that could lead it back into the topside green zone here and then go on a march. You can see above 5K. We're likely going to see this weekend the upper second update to around 5,500. It's currently at 53.50 or so. It's probably going to update to 5,500. Upper third's going to start getting into the bottom side of that 1.168 soon, around 6,500 as well. So just be aware of kind of how the picture is evolving over time. And of course, I'll follow up with you all on Monday. I know this was a longer one, but I think it's important to kind of get some of the minutia out of the way as we head into Monday and the first full week of Q4. And that's going to be an important one. So something to watch next week, the first full week of Q4. All right, you have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. If you enjoy this content, please like and share it out there. And with all that said, Landy out. Take care.